everyone, this is Lori Smith on Spreaker, and glad to be here tonight. Looking at Saturday night, May the 12th, and I just want to talk about protecting children. This is in response to something that came out in the news, pretty much that I saw yesterday. A young girl was murdered and sexually assaulted and murdered, and they busted the guy that did it, and it took a year to actually to charge him and sentence him. And what a relief for that family. I'm sure the family of that little girl, she was 8 years old. Probably a real relief for them, not for a year not knowing where their daughter's body was, a little 8-year-old girl. This song is the song that was playing. There was traces from the Deliverance, and all those criminals, it's so great when they actually get enough evidence and enough proof to actually put them away. And this is a little girl we're talking about. This is an 8-year-old girl who sadly enough was sexually assaulted and murdered, by a very sick individual and his accomplice. And that's really horrifying, you know what I mean? Like, I just, I have a voice, and I just feel like I just need to use it. Everybody needs to stand up and speak out against this. This is absolutely sick and twisted. And the sad thing is this case, is just one child, right? I mean, there'll be so many more that just don't make the paper, right? This one got national attention, and it got national coverage, and so many children are murdered every day that really, you don't hear anything about it. And if you do one little article somewhere, sometimes you don't hear about it. They're not all reported, they're not all reported by the news, right? Children are dying, children are being murdered, children are being killed. If they're not being murdered outright, they're just dying from the injuries that they sustain from being abused, from being sexually abused in some way, neglected. This is horrible. And this is what I talk a whole lot about over on Blog Talk Radio, and now I'm on Spreaker. And it's just heartbreaking because, these little kids out here, they don't have a voice, right? Unless we become their voice. They don't have any protection unless we protect them. And they have rights. They have human rights just like everybody else. They have all the human rights afforded to that every human on this planet has human rights, And children do too, and they have child rights. They actually have a few more rights than adults do, because they're children. And people are taking those children's rights away. And there's so many people, the sad issue is that most people really don't care. You get a few people that really do care, and there's a whole lot of people that were abused that care, that are talking about it because they were abused. But the world doesn't seem to care. It just keeps carrying on while these sick monsters out here continue to kill and murder and maim and torture and sexually use and do whatever they do to children, right? And it's incredibly wrong. I don't know what could be going through somebody's mind, somebody who would do this to a child. I don't know who could do that to a child. It can't be somebody with any kind of decency or humanity left in them. How could you even be a human being and do something like that to a child? You can't be. I classify them as monsters, right? Well, I was abused as a child. I was sexually abused as well at the age of 8. That's why this story particularly bothers me. Because, I was 8 years old when I was raped and sodomized as well. And sadly enough, I know so many people who were abused, Like I know Carol D. Levine, she's a good friend of mine. She's an author. She's a survivor. She survived a kidnapping at the age of 8 years old. Kidnapping by a stranger who abducted her, just like this other little 8-year-old girl here, who raped her. And she's written a story called, I need to get that for you. Anyway, it's a really good book, Carol D. Levine. And I'll have to find the title for that. I had the book, but I lent it to a friend and I didn't get it back. But anyway, horrible. She survived. Carol D. Levine. She was 8 years old. This stranger abducted her right down at the end of her street and took her just a short ways away from her house, raped her, sexually assaulted her, and then dropped her off where she could run back to her house, and then took off. Well, this guy was busted, and he had sexually assaulted, I forget how many little girls around the age of 8 years old in that area, in her town where she grew up, back east, on the east coast there. And horrific. Well, they got him. He was 21 years old. That kind of bothers me because my brother was 21 years old when he was raping me too. And, it's so incredibly sick and sad. I saw the picture in the paper there of the guy that actually killed that little girl, that 8-year-old, just recently. Well, he killed her a year ago, but they just now busted him, and they just now, sentenced him and found him guilty, right, of murder and sexual assault. And, he doesn't look all that old. I'm thinking, what could be going through that guy's mind? How could you do that to a child? And you know what's sad? Is that this is going on everywhere. Like, this is going on in homes right now all around the world. It's going on in schools, it's going on in institutions, it's going on everywhere. Because for some reason, these sick individuals want to have sex with children. Now, that makes me sick to my stomach. And I don't care who you are. I've been talking about this for about 3 years. I don't care. I've had opposition. A lot of people don't like to hear me talk about this stuff because they don't want anybody to shut them down. Lots of people want to continue to abuse children. There's whole groups lobbying the government for adult-child sexual relationships. They want to make it legal, right? Well, I think this is incredibly wrong. I think children should be allowed to be children. And, when a child is grown up, and they're of the adult, age of consent, and they want to go out and start having sexual relations, well, that's their own business. Legally, they're allowed to, right? They're old enough to make some decisions for themselves. That's fine. 8-year-old children, no, right? And here we have people killing them, raping and sexually assaulting children and killing them. This makes me sick to my stomach. It's frustrating. It really is, because for everyone, this guy, like they put that guy, now he's in jail, he's going to go to prison. For everyone they catch, you know how many are still out there? Like my abuser got away with it. Now, he killed himself many years later, but, it was my brother, right? And he got away with it. My mother knew what he was doing, and she did nothing to stop it. Now, she wasn't standing there watching, but she knew because I told her. And I told her what he was doing, and she didn't stop it. I was 8 years old. What was I supposed to do? She said, that's not my problem, that's your problem. But my mom was my main abuser. So, there you go. Not all moms are out to protect their children, right? And it's just sad. It's so pathetic that people think it's okay to do this stuff to children. Like, this is really wrong. Like that photo that I saw online of that guy who killed that little girl. He looks evil. He looks twisted. What could be going through somebody's mind that could do something like that? They specifically planned the capture and the kidnapping of that little girl. They were just looking for any little girl who was available, right? People, you got to protect your children. I'm telling you, if you have children, you cannot think that this world is a safe place. I'll tell you why. Because when I was growing up, I was always out running around by myself because my parents, back in those days in the 1960s, nobody was paying much attention to, children were allowed to run around in the streets, especially in the front of their houses, right? And especially in front of the neighborhoods, where they lived, right? In the front yard, and maybe the next few yards over where the kids are playing or whatever. Nobody thought anything about it. Well, there was sick perverts around then too. You know what I mean? Nothing's changed. It's just that people weren't thinking, They weren't thinking at all. They're still not thinking. But kids are still disappearing. But I was kidnapped almost 5 times. And each one of those times I got away. And each time, there was always somebody around. Like, thank God, it wasn't my parents. My parents didn't give a shit about me or my siblings. But the thing is, that's dangerous, very dangerous. When I was 5 years old, an older man who had white hair, so he was an older man, almost got away with me, was walking off with me down the street. The neighbor actually stopped him. So, there you go, 5 years old. Then again later on, and as a teenager, like many times, about 5 times. And I got away, but there was always somebody around, Thank God. Well, one time I actually was just I don't know how I got out of the situation. I got out of it, but I got out of it. But I kind of put myself in the situation. I was a young teenager and on the, kind of on the streets and abused at home, and so I was doing stupid things, and I didn't really care about myself, and I used to get myself into some pretty scary situations. But these are little kids, man, that are out there playing in the front yard, disappearing because somebody entices them away. What did the article that I was reading about that little girl that was killed and murdered? She was they enticed her by saying that she could come and see their little dog, so they enticed her away, and they got her. And she never saw another day. She was sexually assaulted. I mean, what kind of a sick couple would do that? That was a man and his wife or girlfriend or whoever. Somebody was an accomplice. How could you do that? They're so sick. There are sick people out there, people. I grew up with some sick people. My parents were abusers. They got away with it. Like they got away with abusing their own children. But, there's a whole lot of other people out there who would abuse your children, right? There's a lot of sick people out there. I'm telling you, if you have children and you're listening to this, man, do not take this for granted. I mean, you can't lock your kids up in the closet and say, you'll be safe in there. You can't come out because I got to keep you safe. But what you do have to do is educate yourself, Educate yourself first, and then educate your children so that they know what to look out for. You tell your children, you don't follow anybody when they say, oh, I've got a cute dog I want you to see, or can you help me with this? Or children are most of the time pretty good-hearted and they want help, so, or they want to, they're sort of trusting, they're sort of naive, right? If somebody tell them something like that, they can just be easily, tricked into things, right? Because they're not thinking somebody's out to rape them and kill them, I mean, this person killed this little girl. This man killed this little girl, or whoever actually did the killing, with a hammer. They beat her head in. How sick and twisted. She was 8 years old. Well, I was raped when I was 8 years old. And, I mean, I just think about that, because I can put myself in her shoes. And my mother bashed my head in several times. But the thing is she's gone. She's gone. Her life was taken, her precious life was taken away from her by two sick, twisted individuals, right? Now, that's incredibly wrong, because she was probably really loved at home. Her family probably loved her. She's probably well looked after. I wasn't. I was abused, so it does, if I would have disappeared, nobody would have cared, because my family was just a bunch of abusers, right? But here, this little girl is gone, never ever coming back, man. She's gone. And that twisted, sick person, we have to pay, our tax dollars are going to have to pay to support this monster and a whole bunch of other ones, in the system. That does bother me. It absolutely does bother me. I'd rather see the money go to prevention organizations or the start of some new prevention organizations that actually work, because obviously the stuff that's going on now isn't working. But it's just, I don't know, people like to live in the world in rose-colored glasses. That's why I like to be a voice for people, to say, you know what, it's not rosy for a lot of kids out there. And, I'm just one person who's willing to speak out about this stuff. My family knows that I'm speaking out against it. What it did was drove a wedge between us. We were never close anyway, because we were abused, all my siblings and myself. And most of my siblings are dead. Two of my abusers are dead. One of my abusers is still living and knows what I'm doing, doesn't care. I've written books, right? I mean, I'm talking about this stuff because somebody's got to. It bothers me, on any given, I mean, I could talk about this stuff 24 hours a day because it bothers me. The kids are dying needlessly. There's no reason for somebody to want to sexually use a child. Why are these people doing this? People could ask me the same question. Why did your brother rape you? Why did your brother molest you, rape you, sodomize you, and sexually use you for a year? Why? Well, sexual gratification. He wanted to get off, right? And I was available. So he tied me up and gagged me and bound me and tied me up and sexually used me for a year. Over a period of a year. And the sad thing is, my mother did nothing about it. And the sad thing is I had been abused for 8 years already by my parents, my mom and dad. So I was already abused, right? That was my life. So would I go for help? No. Did I ever go for help? No. Nobody in our family went for help. We were all abused, right? We're all growing up very psychologically screwed up. And, I think back on it and I think, had I told one of the teachers at school, but probably something would have been done. My parents had already been brought up on charges, like they would have been busted. So would my brother, right? But see, I know people who were sexually abused by their brothers, and their brothers were actually allowed to stay in the home. They didn't remove them. All they did was suggest counseling. Well, that's what they would have done, because this was back in the 70s. And they would have just suggested counseling. See, back when my parents were abusing us, well, my parents abused us our whole lives. The thing is, when they got busted and they actually got hauled into court, they were told, oh, it's okay, you just need counseling. It's okay, that you've beat and battered and twisted your children's minds and bodies. That's just fine, but you guys need counseling. Well, see, that's exactly what would have happened. Nothing would have changed. Nothing would have happened. Right? This is the sad reality. So that's why I like to be a voice out here, because I don't mind being honest, right? It's reality. There is no help for these children, right? There is no help for children. And the people that are trying, God bless them. The people in the system that's broken and not working, I know there's a lot of people there that are probably good-hearted and really do care. And they're probably heartbroken too that it isn't working. And the sad thing is that people just think they can do whatever they want to children. My brother just figured, hey, here's I'll just use my little sister as a sex toy for a year, and he got away with it. And my parents, they hated us. They absolutely hated us. I talk a lot about this stuff, like on other shows, and Blog Talk Radio. I have like 900 shows there, if you want to ever go back and listen to some of this stuff. But they didn't care. They didn't care that they hurt us and maimed us and screwed us up for life. Two of my brothers killed themselves. We were all suicidal. Like, my parents didn't care because they hated us. They hated each other. They hated themselves. So they just figured they could do whatever they wanted to us. And my mom would say this. My mom would say, I can take you out of this world if I want. But I mean, she was serious. This is why she was beating the shit out of me and breaking my head open, And I mean, I knew she could kill me, and I didn't care. I used to tell her, go ahead and kill me. One more blow. Because I used to piss her off just in hopes that she would kill me. Because I wanted to be dead, But the sad reality is that poor little 8-year-old that was killed and sexually assaulted and murdered probably didn't want to be dead. Like, she probably had loving parents who loved her and cared about her. And a loving family, right? And there's a difference, a big difference. Like, some of these kids out here are so loved and so cared for, and they get carted off by these sick monsters and killed, and, they probably didn't want to die. By the time I was 10, I wanted to die. I was just like, kill me now. Otherwise, I'll have to do it later, right? Almost all of my family was suicidal, so it's because of the abuse, right? But it's just so pathetic. It is so absolutely pathetic that people think that they can do whatever they want to children. They can hurt their children, they can burn and torture their children, they can beat their children to death, they can scar their children, they can scar their children's minds and hearts and psyches, that they can break their children's spirit to the point they want to die, and think they can get away with it. My parents did. My dad thinks he's a saint. Well, it's because he's mentally ill. He thinks he's God or something. I don't know what his problem is, but anyway, he's mentally ill. He's schizophrenic. But, it's just sad. It's so incredibly sad. Why is this going on? Why are people doing these things to children? This is a big question for me. I keep asking it every time I do one of these shows. Actually, I keep asking it every day. Why? Why? I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't know how you could do that. Like, I don't know how anybody could do these things that they do to children. You see all the headlines coming out all the time about all the abuse that's going on for, children dying, children in the hospital due to the abuse, children being removed from the homes because they've been burned and beaten and raped and sodomized and all this other shit. Well, we didn't get removed from the home, so, the abuse just kept going on and on. But the thing is, some of these children get removed from the home, and then they get put into foster care, and then it's no better, right? Because the system is not working, right? So, I don't know. I talked a whole lot about this last year and the year before, that we really need think tanks, whole cities full of think tanks that all coordinate, and collaborate into one countrywide think tank of people trying to figure out how we're going to stop this. Because I talk a lot about these young people who are just graduating, Because I think about all the headlines that I see out there, and most of these people that are killing and murdering their babies and sexually using their babies, there's all kinds of headlines out there about, 21, 22, 23-year-old men who are raping their own children, their own babies, little 3-month-old babies and stuff. Why? I don't know. Why would anybody do that? That's so absolutely unnecessary. You know, but people are. They're raping and killing their own children and their own babies, and they have been doing this since time began. It's nothing new. The issue is it's all about 21, 22, 23-year-olds mainly. There's a lot of the headlines out there you see. And the thing is these people just graduated a few years ago. What's going on in their minds? What's going on in their heads? And what I think, we need to reach the young people. We need to reach these little kids in elementary school and start training them up properly, because obviously their parents ain't doing it. Or their caregivers. Whoever's looking after them is not doing the right job, right? And we need to start with them, and we need to get them to stop abusing children. Because all of these people, these young people that just graduated from, university or from high school or whatever, in the next few years are going to go out and how many of them we're going to see their stuff in the news, how they killed or abused their children. We'll see a lot of them, right? This is so sad and so pathetic and so wrong, right? Because those children don't deserve that. The reason I scream out about this is because I know what it's like to be abused as a child. I did not deserve any of it. Not any of it. No child does. And I scream out and I think, how bloody unfair, to have to grow up in a home where you're hated and you're abused on a regular basis. And then your brother sexually abuses you and rapes you, and you end up sick and ill and barren. I can't even have children because of this. And, so I have no children because my brother decided to rape me. Great. And he didn't rape me one time, right? This was over a period of about a year. And so, it left my body barren, right? I can have no children. So that was a nice little sentence given to me. And, it's so bloody unfair. Why should a child have to grow up like that? People that have children should love their children and care about them and protect them and look after them, right? The minute that I told my mother what my brother was doing, she should have said, "That's it, brother, charges are going to be pressed, you're going to get some help, and I'm going to get some help for my daughter." But see, my mother was my main abuser. Right? She was bashing my head in all the time and beating the shit out of me and cursing me and spitting on me and throwing me out of the house. And she wasn't going to get me any help. She was being sexually abused by my dad. So there you go. There was no help for her. So she was like, well, no help for me. My mom was abused as a child too. No help for me, no help for you, was her attitude. Like, how sick and twisted can you possibly be? 2 rooms away. My mom was 2 rooms away while my brother was raping me and sexually using me. 2 rooms away. And did not care. No, she didn't care, because she tried to kill me numerous times after that. No, she didn't care about me. Because I was born a rape child. Because my dad raped her, and I was born from that rape, right? Marital rape. But my mom hated my dad, so there you go. So then she hated me. So she didn't care. So I grew up and I'm thinking, oh great, I'm a rape child because my mother told me, I hate you, you're a rape child, get away from me. My mom hated my guts, right? And so I was a rape child and I was raped. I was so pissed off. And growing up, especially right around 12, 13, 14 years old, I was pissed off. And I was like, I just want out, I want out. I just don't even want to live anymore. And I was mad. Because that should have never happened to me. I deserved love. I deserved care, right? I'll never get that. Now I have to do that for myself as an adult. Thing is I'll never get that. I'll never understand what it's like to have a parent care for you as a child. I'll never understand what it's like to have a parent stand up for you and protect you as a child and not beat the shit out of you and throw you out. No, I'll never know. I'll never know what that's like. And the sad thing is there's a lot of kids out there like that. I know a lot just because of the advocacy work that I do. But I knew a lot growing up. See, so a lot of my friends are dead, but they were abused as well, right? And, you know, they would never know. Like we were close because we knew that we were never ever going to know what it was like to be just an innocent child growing up loved and cared for and accepted within the family, you know, and wanted and needed and loved as part of a family, right? There's so many sick people out there who will if they don't kill their children physically, you know, they'll kill them emotionally, spiritually. You know, they'll kill them anyway, right? So whether the child dies or lives, they're still dead, right? The Walking Dead. So it's a sad, sad thing. You know, if you have children and you're listening to this, you know, you do the right thing by your children at all times. They are counting on you. They need your protection. They need your help. They need your education. They need you to figure it out and then, you know, show them how to protect themselves and how to look out for stranger danger, and also from internal sources like, you know, people within the family that could abuse them, because actually, you know, the larger portion of child sexual abuse happens within the home, the largest portion, and it also happens by somebody that the child knows. It's usually incestuous normally, and a lot of times it's the parent, right? And there's a lot of guilt wrapped up in that, you know. Sometimes it's a situation where the child won't tell because there's a lot of guilt wrapped up in that. You know, they don't want mom or dad to go to jail. They don't want mom or dad to go to prison. They don't want grandma or grandpa to go to prison, you know. Women sexually abuse children too, right? Hope everybody knows that. And, you know, it's so sick and twisted, right? And so these children are wrapped up. Now for me, it was forcible rape. So I was tied up, I was bound, I was gagged, and it was a forcible violent rape, right? And forcible violent sexual assaults every time. So I didn't develop that situation where, oh, you know, out of love I wouldn't tell, right? It was out of fear. Because he told me he would sodomize me again if I ever told anybody, and I was like, oh God, I can't take that. No. So as a child, it was out of fear that I didn't tell, right? So that, you know, that's a lot of children won't tell because of that, right? So there's many reasons why children won't tell, and you have to, if you have children, you have to let them know that they have to tell you, no matter what, you know. And get the information. Check out like Little Warriors and you know, Child Safe and Child Help and Child Welfare Information Gateway. I mean, there's every kind of RAIN, you know. I mean, there's every kind of website out there that talks about prevention and how to protect your children from strangers and from people inside your home. There's also Stewards of the Children. There's Talk, and there's so many groups, you know, that do some great work to help promote education, you know, to protect children, right? So make sure you get the information if you have kids, right? Look out for the children. And if you don't have kids, look out for the kids around you, because sometimes nobody will, right? A lot of times these kids are just throwaway kids. Nobody cares about them, right? We have to care. Have a great night, everybody. Talk to you real soon.